I will call the Norfolk School Building Committee meeting for April 10th to order. I don't think we have to do roll call, and everybody's here, so
except for Justin.
Except for Justin.
He's at the fire station meeting.
So first order on the agenda is to review the minutes from last meeting. Did everybody have a chance to take a peek before? Okay, me too. So anybody have anything they want to add or change? Nope, okay. So looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Looking for a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, awesome. So moving on, I know it was in the packet and it's right here. We did receive the final report from the Demographic Analytic Advisors, DAA. And so Ingrid, I don't know if you want to comment at all on it. It seems pretty thorough and,
I think it
reviewed.
Yeah, it really, I've had a chance to read through it. I know you guys just got it. I just got it Monday too. It really just summarizes what they presented during the meeting. I think it provided a little bit more data on the sources of data that they used to gather their results and more detail on the process used. But overall, I think we are where we are. They're not that far off from what NASDAQ had originally projected. We're expected to trend under NASDAQ for the next 4 years and then actually catch up and surpass the original projections in years 5 through 10. And it's really based on what they talked about. The gap between NASDAQ's projections and our actuals, they thought, was highly driven by that 1K cohort class that came in significantly lower than predicted. We did find a couple of reasons for that. One was we did see more families, what's called red shirting, or holding their K-eligible child out for an extra year post-COVID. We saw an increase in the number of families choosing alternative options the year that we reopened. So charter schools, private schools, more homeschooling, although those trends are now coming back down, and the newer enrollment classes this year and next year are back to the high NASDAQ predictions. So they do think it's a one-year anomaly. As these classes are 160, 170 students are rolling up, that's where the growth is going to come. So I think it was a very detailed, thorough report. I think, highly reputable organization and consistent with the prior predictions. So it's in your packet for you guys to review. If there's any questions that you want me to forward to DAA for clarification on the report, I can do that. We haven't released this publicly because I felt it should come to the building committee first for your review and any feedback or questions you had that you wanted clarified before we release it. Then it will be, we're scheduled to have a joint meeting with the school committee and the select board on April 23rd, and DAA is going to come and present this to both boards because the full school committee hasn't heard the results, nor have the full select board. So April 23rd, Christopher Dick, who did the first presentation, will be at presenting virtually the results of the study at the select board meeting. So any questions anybody had, or anything you want me to address with DA, or you can also email me after you've had a chance to fully review the report if there's points of clarification.
And will this be, with the plan was to put this up on the school website as well?
Yeah, I just felt that the committee that...
No, I get, I just
yeah.
like going forward.
Yep, we'll put it out on the website, and then it'll go in, it'll be online for the select board packet and school committee packet too on the town website.
Okay. Great.
That's it.
All right, so the next thing on our agenda, we have Justin from AI3 here to walk us through what's been going on.
A lot of information for us today. So.
Yeah, a lot of numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through NASDAQ's initial projections. We're going to go through DAA's projections, how they compare, and really when we look at ultimately what becomes of the building size, we're really looking at two different things. We're looking at classroom counts, but we're also looking at building capacity. And both of those need to be developed and worked through at the same time. So I'm going to be forward with you right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of information, a lot of numbers. Try to follow I'll get to the end, and then we can always come back and talk about any of this. But I'll try to wrap it up at the end, and it'll make more sense because, again, we're juggling both the classroom counts and the enrollment. So there were assumptions made, and I'm going to try to skip a lot of the analysis for everybody. So with that, and this is the same handout that you all have in front of you as well. If you want to see closer. So this is the previous NESDEC enrollment numbers. The year 2026, 2027, that was our previous benchmark based upon our 2022 study, based upon last year's feasibility study. So that was the previous benchmark established. Identifying HOD being 461 students and Freeman Kennedy 688. And that is for the 5-year projection out. Now, with the new demographic study with DAA, that benchmark actually shifted down slightly because it's 2 years newer, so there's new additional information. So sliding that threshold 5-year window out to 2029, 2030, that is now the initial 5-year benchmark out. So looking at those numbers, just from the NESDEC perspective, instead of 461 and 688, we're now at 474 and 667. So HOD went up, 13, and Freeman Kennedy went down 15, whatever that delta is, 19. So a little bit of flux, but that benchmark from NESDEC shifted slightly. Looking at that comparatively for DAA, so not looking at the 2026-27 because that's the previous benchmark. We're not looking at that anymore. We're looking at 2029-2030. You can see here DAA identifies, and I'll summarize all these so you don't need to remember the numbers again. The 2029-2030 for DAA, HOD is 503, and Freeman Kennedy is 650. Looking at now DAA, because they did the updated demographics, we also wanted to take a look at what happens 10 years out. Is there a dip? Really what happens in evaluating that 10-year projection as well. So maximizing the projections down here to 2034, 35. We're looking at HOD at 521 and Freeman Kennedy at 692. Now you'll realize I didn't mention pre-K at all in this because there's between 60, 62, 67, the numbers vary slightly, but that is the current. We know that there is a long wait list for that program. So projections of projecting, okay, 60 students, 62, 63, like that actually is not truly accurate because you're capped by space. So understanding that component and understanding that there's a long wait list, what we would propose, and again, all of this is open for conversation of what gets carried forward, is that the previous study identifying 105 pre-K students gets carried forward. That equates to 7 pre-K classrooms. So that is a consistent group of information that we're carrying along. In the background over here, you'll see it lumped into how it impacts everything else. So we're specifically looking at HOD and at Freeman Kennedy.
Justin, can I just jump on that for the new members to the committee? So we are required to provide free preschool programming for students as of their 3rd birthday who have disabilities. That's a state requirement. In doing that, we're also required to provide integrated programming, which means you have to have an equal number of typical peers or more, or else it's considered a substantially separate program, which is not the least restrictive. So we have to provide that preschool programming. We have 5 classrooms currently and 72 families on the wait list. If we assume, the reason why we have that 105 benchmark number is if we assume, based on all the data that we've looked at in the district, that our special education population is growing commensurate with the regular growth, we are going to have additional students in preschool who are mandated to receive programming. So we will have to then bring in a matching number of peers. So we are assuming at minimum in the next 10 years, we have 5 classrooms now, we will have to add at least 2 more. Preschool has a cap size of 15 students, so that's 7 students that are receiving services and 8 typical peers. So that's why that estimate, that will not meet the demand or need in town. I assume we will have a very similar wait list situation at that time. But it allows us to bring in at least a few more peer models.
And to meet our legal obligations.
Yes, yeah, we don't have an option on that part.
So just to confirm, so the 105 is just the base minimum to meet our legal obligations?
That's our expectation of what that will be. We're projecting, again, that special education population growth will mirror the current growth, which is what our other equity audit study and other things have looked at,
So the 105 isn't the demand?
No,
It's
it
just-
will, it will leave a large number of families still on the wait list.
Okay.
Do the families on the wait list for pre-K get counted towards next year's kindergarten class? Because they would be the kindergarten age?
They're not all kindergarten age, so they enter at 3, but we
Right.
do use the town census data and the birth data to project kindergarten. And we do estimate based on who we currently have, but preschool's not mandatory, so families we might not know of families
Yeah.
in town that are in private preschool programs too.
Yeah, and both demographic studies indicate that. You can see pre-K numbers roughly 60, but then, well, this is per grouping, but if you looked at the kindergarten numbers, it's not 60 or 65. You're up
It's
to
160.
170,
Or
160.
170, yeah.
It's that jump. So moving forward to this graphic here, and this is where we start tracking the 2 tracks, or following the 2 tracks here. Top of the screen is Freeman Kennedy, bottom of the screen is HOD. Looking at capacity just from a student count perspective. So that's taking into some assumptions regarding range. We have a low number and a high number. The low number for Freeman Kennedy is based upon 18 students per room. The high number is based on 22 students per room. So that's how we establish the range of current capacity as well as proposed capacity.
And I'll just jump on that,
Yep.
because again, just to keep everybody along. We base this on the school committee target class size and the current last 10-year average class size. So the target class size for Freeman is 18. We haven't been in that ballpark for years. Our average class size is closer to 22. So that's why the board is set that way. There's a smaller target number for early childhood with a maximum of 22. So that's where those ranges came from.
Yeah, and so working across current capacity, Kennedy, 486 to 594, HOD, 396 to 480. And again, you'll see where the grade configuration is noted right there. What you'll see below it is sort of the part 2 process moving along. 27 classrooms currently in Freeman Kennedy and 25 in HOD. So these classroom counts multiplied by your range gives you the current capacity. So that's where this information, the current capacity came from. Moving over to the next column, the proposed capacity. So if we increase the number of classrooms, enrollment can go up. Jumping ahead here, 33 classrooms for Freeman Kennedy. So adding 6 classrooms for grades 3 through 6 increases the enrollment to 594 to 726. Again, utilizing the numbers of the max and the min. Similarly, HOD, you can see 400 to 500. This holds the current 25 classrooms, but the delta there really is with moving pre-K out. You can then utilize those rooms for K through 2, and you can fit more students in those classrooms based upon the guidelines that we established. Not only 15, now it's anywhere 16 to 20. So that's why that jumped a little bit, even though there are no added classroom and teaching spaces within that space. Again, you can see here, 105 pre-K, that just carries across the line here. So you'll see some assumptions, 33 classrooms at Freeman Kennedy, so that's an add of 6. And that was what was initially identified a year ago, 2 years ago. And then the 7 pre-K classrooms. So over here on the right, these 2 right columns start to show where does the actual projected enrollments fit within that range. Because what we want to show is that you're not building a building that you're maxing out, or you're not in either range, you're within the middle of it. So projected enrollments 2029, 2030. NESDEC had 667, DAA had 650. You can see that lands pretty much right in the middle of the proposed capacity. Looking ahead, 10 years out, NESDEC didn't go that far out, but DAA did because of the new study. DAA had it at 692. Total capacity is 726, so it's still within that max capacity for Freeman Kennedy. Likewise, down to HOD. Again, you can see the numbers and how they fit. 474 within that range. 503, 3 students over. We'll get into conversations regarding class counts. And then again, here NESDEC did not provide because they ended earlier. And then DAA was 521, 21 students over that identified capacity. Now that capacity, again, it's based on what Superintendent just said, HOD, 20 students per room. That is the target, or
That's the average
that's
class
the average.
size.
It's not necessarily the maximum. So I'll get into exactly what it means, how many students would have to be to keep that within range. So that is one component we look at. So that's building capacity. But with all these added students, you can see we're getting towards the middle to higher range of proposed capacity. What does that mean for classroom counts? Because these kids aren't evenly split across all grade levels. So we need to look at it from a classroom per grade level basis. So that's what the next slide shows here. And that's where we start going back and forth between, and it's in your packet, and I'll high level this because it's a little small. What we did, compared every grade level, projecting from NESDEC and DAA enrollment numbers. We targeted the delta just to provide that information of where they varied, anywhere from 10, 15 in either direction. And then we looked at classroom counts. So everything above the line is for the 2029, 2030 projection. Everything below the line is 34, 35. So for classroom counts, we took the actual number of students in each classroom and divided it by the information identified on the left here. So HOD, we divided it by 20 students per room. Freeman Kennedy, 22 students per room. And that gave us the actual classroom counts, rounded of course. We always round up because of
Can't have half a
reasons.
classroom.
Exactly, you can't have a classroom and you don't want to overcut every single classroom. So we always round up. So by taking the actual total numbers, splitting it to 20 for HOD, 22 for Freeman Kennedy, it gave us our classroom counts. For the 2029, 2030, you can see these are the totals here. Based on the NESDEC numbers, you need 25 classrooms at HOD, which is what you currently have, and you need 32 at Freeman Kennedy, which is what the initial study of 33 classrooms started to come from. Based on the updated DAA numbers, HOD is higher. It's identifying 27 classrooms at HOD and 31 at Freeman Kennedy. So Freeman Kennedy is still, it's less than that identified 33. But you can see HOD 27, there's 2 extra rooms. So we went ahead and did the math. What happens if your 20 students per room bumps up? What is that threshold to get it to be within 25? If you go from 20 students per room to 21, that's all that needs to happen to stay within 25 classrooms. How the math works out based on the grade separation and how everything is split. So that is what would be needed within this bubble year to allow that to occur. And then, again, HOD would be on and Freeman Kennedy would be 2 classrooms under for that 5-year projection. We then did the same thing for the 10-year because we had that information from DAA. Where does that mean? We didn't have it from NESDEC, so there's zeros over here. But for DAA, same thing. Looking at HOD, Freeman Kennedy, you can see HOD, again, targeting 27. Freeman Kennedy, 32. Now, the numbers for the 10-year projections were slightly higher for HOD, so bumping up to 21 did not flip it back down to 25 classrooms. We would have to bump the number up to 22. And by bumping it up to 22, it allowed it to remain within 5 classrooms based upon grade configuration and how those numbers separated. And again, Freeman Kennedy remains at 32, 1 short of what the initial target was. So, and side note, pre-K, 7 classrooms, just sort of carrying along over here off to the side throughout the process. So to summarize, and then we can go back to any and all of this. Previous study, we had targeted 33 for Freeman Kennedy, so an add of 6 and 7 pre-K classrooms. Total project size of just over 36,000 square feet. That was to accommodate the classrooms, that was to accommodate the support space, and the rest. feasibility study update to compare apples to apples. What we would recommend doing, and this is open for conversation, but is to compare 33 classrooms, so an out of 6, 33 total, and then 7 for pre-K, approximate same size of 36,000 square feet. That may fluctuate slightly based upon modular units, but our target would be approximately the same. That way, this group here can truly compare apples to apples. So I know that was a ton of numbers and a ton of information. I'll pause and we can open it up for questions, comments, thoughts.
So the expansion's actually 13 classrooms?
Yes. So
To,
7
yes.
preschool
Okay,
and.
Yeah, yeah.
the 7 pre-K
Yes.
plus the 6?
Plus 6, yes,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
Yep. Yep.
It also involves, and this is more detailed than we need to get into for today, but reclaiming classrooms. So we have, like, we gave up the science lab. Right now, we don't have a science lab, it's a classroom. That would be relocated so that we could get the classrooms back. So it's new classrooms, but also gains us back some space that we previously lost.
And would those classrooms be put into the modular space? Because I know they were
We only
in-
did the brick and mortar study, so in the
Well-
study, yeah. So
But
they're put into the building
Okay, in the
space.
brick and mortar.
Yes. Yep.
Those new spaces
Yep.
were in the addition.
We put a science lab in the addition so that we could reclaim the one that's on the wing as a classroom.
Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
I'll hold because I'm sure that's.
Yeah, the 7 pre-K classrooms were in the new
Yep.
addition. And then there were, I believe, 5 of the added classrooms were in the addition because some of them were added
put
back
back
into
in
the
here.
reclaim
Yep.
because there was some swapping
Okay.
of program based upon ideal adjacency, and based upon spaces that have currently been in this building, currently taken over by other programs, like the science lab, for an example.
If we had like some cohort that was like an aberration, what is the capacity of an individual classroom in terms of if they had to like balloon it out all the way? Like, is there a per square foot per child number or something like that?
There is, but I think you're going to actually run into protocol from school committee.
Yeah,
prior
we
to-
have a maximum class size.
What's that? I'm just curious.
So at the HL day, the maximum class size, I believe it's 21, and up at the Freeman, it's 25. It might be 22.
I think it's 22.
It might be 22.
I think it's 22. I
think it's 22.
Yeah, I know it's
Is that like
25
a
at the
state
upper
law or
grade.
just film? Again, I don't know.
It's a
committee
school
policy.
committee policy.
Okay.
There isn't a state law. Most districts have school committee policies.
Okay.
Yep.
But I would say one of the biggest issues that we have is competition with private schools and charter schools. And we do an annual benchmark study. Our current average class sizes, which we used for the projections of 20, is not, of all of the comparison communities, we're at the upper end for class size already. So we used to be on the lower end and we had really competitive class sizes. We're not anymore. So with a class size of 20, we are above most of our comparison districts. We're in, I think, the top quartile for.
I think there was
for our
only one
comparisons.
of them lower. We
That
just
was
went
per
over
pupil
it.
spending.
That's per pupil spending, but in terms of class size.
Picturing the
we're
wrong
in
chart.
We're in the upper end of average sizes in this region. And we are bumping up above what the charter school had for class sizes in recent years.
Sure, yeah, and again, I'm only asking because like, we
Yeah, no,
have
it's
this number
important
here,
to
like,
know.
if there was a way, again, if we had a balloon of, one cohort or something,
Yeah.
like, could you divide a classroom in two? Are there legal limits on how?
There is square foot requirements.
That's what I'm trying to get at, like,
you
yeah,
can't-
like,
you-
this is like a standard unit, like one classroom's like a standard unit of measurement, basically.
Yeah, what do you guys?
Yeah, there are standard minimum requirements. What you have right now for classroom sizes can hold more than 25, and we see this in all districts. And typically, it's the school committee policy that governs how many students can fit in. If you were to split a classroom based upon current size, you could not fit 25 in there, just from a building code. Even if school committee said, yeah, that's fine, from a building code and occupancy calculation, you couldn't fit that many people.
Okay, yeah, like, again, I'm just
Yeah.
completely just trying to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
typically, it's the school committee policy that is driving a lot of what the occupancy is. And then there's also best practice, which is in alignment with school committee based upon educational spaces and the
Sure.
rest, so.
But by keeping it at, say, 20 or 22, it allows for an outlier to come through,
Right.
so you give yourself, you're not maxed out right from the
Right.
get-go.
Right, from
I think that's what
a
you're-
building capacity, from
Yeah.
an actual physical and a building code, absolutely, yes. And that's typically what we see in districts is target is, say, 22, even say at a middle school level is 24. The room can physically fit 30 ideally, but it gives that buffer for districts to allow for bubble years and growth.
Okay,
'Cause,
yeah, that's kinda what I was
again,
getting
these
at.
are projections, and ultimately it would be a waiver or a policy change from the school committee to allow that bubble to go through.
So,
And I
I'm
think
not
that's,
suggesting-
that's sort of what you were just referencing with HOD, because the new projections are coming in higher than NESDEC. And so we couldn't accommodate using that average class size of 20, we wouldn't be able to fit the number of students. So you may, in the district, have to bump that up to 21, potentially 22 students for that bubble year to accommodate that growth. Or the school committee may make other decisions like we've done last year where we don't have a computer lab or makerspace anymore. We repurpose that as a classroom. We didn't have a music room last year, it became a classroom. So there are different things you can do for short-term needs. They're not great sustainably curriculum-wise for long-term solution.
just, I guess out of curiosity, do we know what our physical legal occupancy of each room is? Like 27 students, 28 students,
No.
25
You're
students?
probably mid-30s.
Oh, mid-30s, Jesus.
But we would,
We would never
never
exceed 25.
Teachers probably wouldn't love that.
No, I just
I know it's helpful.
how big of a bubble can you take is what
Yeah.
I guess, but that's a lot of kids in those classrooms.
Right, exactly that, yeah.
And I mean, I would
I
say.
don't think that the committee would support exceeding.
No. I totally
And again,
understand that. I'm just curious, just from a physical
Yep.
limitation, it's about
Yeah,
30.
that's just strictly building code.
Yeah.
Is
The
there
only other thing, though, with that we should keep in mind is there's also a capacity limit for septic, for
Oh, yeah.
other functions within the building that is, I think you're going to talk about. My guess is you're talking about next. Am I jumping ahead?
We will in the future, but,
Okay.
yeah, so regarding that, we did have septic studies and analysis done for the actual physical expansion. If we move forward with the 33.7, basically these numbers here, the capacity of the septic, the capacity, the water capacity, all of that stuff remains the same because it's the same occupants and it's the same number of fixtures that are needed. So all the previous work done for utility analysis still holds true for these mods, with the same, using the same information moving forward from a capacity standpoint.
Can I ask one more question on the class size, just for
Yeah.
my own knowledge? You sparked something. Is there anything in the teacher's contract about class size? Because I'm picturing a
There
class
is
I've
not.
been in, and it's like.
There is in some districts. Our teacher's
Ours do
contract
not.
does not
Okay.
have that. But they haven't really needed to have it because the school committee policy governs that. And as Midori said, there's a target number of 16 for the lower grades. I've been here for 13 years. We've never seen a class
Yeah.
that
So
low.
anecdotally, neither one of my children, one of whom is now a freshman in high school and the other one is in 5th grade, has ever been in a class that is smaller than 19 students.
Yeah.
And one of them has been in a class of 25.
Yeah.
So we are not anywhere near the target. You know, I mean, the targets would be lovely. They would be great for educational purposes.
We haven't seen
Smashing
it.
MCAS, it would be amazing. But
I just didn't
But
know if we
it's
were going to
20
run into an issue with the union if we didn't,
Yeah.
You probably would if
Eventually.
they exceeded school committee policy. There was one year that we did exceed the policy limit in kindergarten because we weren't expecting this rapid growth. And the school committee had to vote for that single year to allow us to exceed the policy in 2 classrooms where we had 23 and we had to put additional staff in both classrooms.
Okay.
But that was a one-year thing. And I think if it was, again, I think the union has protection because there's a policy in place that maxes at 25
So they don't
and
need to put it in their
22.
contract, but if we,
Right.
yeah. That makes sense.
But it has been a significant bargaining issue in a lot of communities. And I think in the absence of that, you probably would see it in the contract.
Is it possible to get a kind of a trending report of where we've been historically, where we are now in?
On the class size?
Yeah.
Yeah, right on our website, there's a document called the Baseline and Benchmark Report. And we just published it in February. We do it annually every year. And there are average class size comparisons the Department of Education identifies what they consider to be like communities for comparison. Most of the ones that we compare to are also K-6 or K-8 districts, primarily because of cost analysis, and high school and middle school have different kinds of costs in there, so it's a better comparison. But every year we call every district, we gather the data, and we publish. So you can see the 3-year trend of where we've been for class size. We've been hovering in the 2021 range with lower classes in the younger grades and up to 23, 24 in the upper grades.
And did you say that was in the bottom quartile?
We are on the higher end of our comparison communities with class size.
Okay.
Yep. But because we do it every year, you can go back to, I always give 3 to 5 years worth of data, so you can go back and see prior years, and you can see the long-term picture.
That's great.
Yeah, we used to be, I think in 2018, we were averaging 18. So then we were up to 19, 20, 21.
Yep.
So.
And then that leads me to like one more question then. I know we're doing this for apples to apples comparison, but is that the capacity of I know we have the septic and the mechanicals and all that stuff, but like, is there a marginal, if you wanted to add one classroom to either one of those numbers, is there like another, or is that like a unit we could, it's like it would be this much more? Is it like that's the max this would be structured for?
So everything has to be designed. So we could say, yeah, we want to bump it to 34 and 8 or whatever it may be. Ultimately, that's this group's decision and conversation. We started with apples to apples, but if it wanted to grow in any way based upon new numbers, that is a possibility. The septic that has already been looked at is preliminary analysis. It's not final design by any means. That is for future stages of the project. Once we get more information, more in depth, it was just an initial analysis of, okay, we're going to need, I believe, 2 more sets of leaching pipes, and the water capacity is good, and whatever else. But that's still all those nuances of, okay, what happens if there's one additional classroom?
And again, obviously, I know that has effects on, okay, that means one more teacher, that means one more this.
Yeah.
But I'm just
Right.
kind of curious, like, if there's, we could, this is something like a conversation we'll have later on in terms of move one this way or the other way.
I think the one positive thing about comparing as Justin said, for the modular design, comparing the apples to apples is it'll give you a true comparison of the cost of the different solutions.
Right.
And based on the more recent study by DAA, it looks like we're pretty close to needing the same number of classrooms,
Yes.
slightly short at HOD. But the Freeman design seems like it will still meet the needs. So again, I think a couple of things with HL of Day. One, the building currently is 35 years old, so we're talking about where it will be when it's 45. Justin, what's the average life expectancy of a school
50.
building? 50 years. So you might have a short-term crunch again at HL of Day, but you are close to the end of life expectancy of that building at that point. So whether you bump up for a short period of time to 21 in a class, or whether you relook at the computer lab, I think those are reasonable decisions that could be looked at that time. But I think based on the projections, the work that's been done looks like it will meet both projections, future demand at the Freeman.
Yeah, Freeman, it was 32 and 31, and then 32, and we don't have the other number, but and that's, again, in comparison to the 33, that was the initial target. And then HOD, yeah, it's looking at classroom counts for that, holding that 25. So moving forward, what we would like to do is we're going to start laying out the modulars, we're going to start looking at how big they actually are, and then getting them onto the site, etc. What we're going to do is we're going to hold 33 classrooms total for Freeman Kennedy, so that's an add of 6 for Freeman Kennedy, and then an add of 7 pre-K classrooms. It's going to be approximately 36,000 square feet. But that will shift slightly again based upon the modular size. Modular is 14 by 66 or 14 by 39. So depending on how those work out, that 36,000 square feet may change slightly within it. But that'll be what our team moves forward with, unless if you feel that we should change those numbers, look at something different. I mean, that's really where this conversation is based upon the initial analysis of the enrollment numbers. It just further supports the previous work done. And it's still in alignment. Yeah, the numbers are higher than DAA, but it's still within the range and the values that were identified.
Everybody feel comfortable with that, or?
I think it makes sense.
I think that is the absolute best approach to take, so that we are looking at, none of this has been designed, right? So we're just in feasibility for any options that we're looking at this point.
Right.
Understanding that all of that will change. We are on the diving board. We're going to choose which diving board to get
Right.
off of, right? And so I think that knowing, how each diving board is at that relative point in time is what we're trying to do
Right.
at this point.
Exactly.
It'll be far easier to explain if it's apples to apples. And,
Right.
I think the simpler the conversation can be and the more straightforward, the better
Yep.
for everybody involved.
Absolutely.
Justin, just one thing I wanted to clarify. So the initial design that we did for Freeman, it's 33 classrooms, again, 6 additional classrooms for Freeman, 7 downstairs, but it also moves the special education offices from H. Olive Day here. So we're moving 5 preschool classrooms over, and in the first floor, we relocated the special education director, her office staff, and the team chair's offices into that first floor. So that created another whole open wing over at Each Olive Day. And what we also intentionally did that because then it prevents the need for another administrator. You have the special ed offices governing the preschool. So those office spaces aren't reflected in that count, but just wanted people to be aware that that was also moving to create capacity at Each Olive Day and manage so that we have clerical staff managing the entrance to the preschool and that there's an administrator on site.
But is that included in the square footage?
Yes.
Not
It
the
is.
classroom
Yes,
count, but it is?
Yes, it's in the
Yeah.
square footage.
So they're still
just so that
moving in
people
the-
that weren't on that committee know that those are also included in that total.
Yeah,
number.
so at our next meeting, we'll have a list of the space summary of all of the spaces that are included, but just so you can quickly hear what they are. For the pre-K component, it's also including speech therapy, the BCBA office, a couple additional offices for the special education, workroom, conference room, the pre-K nurse is going to be included in there to support the pre-K component, all the pre-K classrooms. Additionally, some of the programs that are moving over and being reconfigured, there'll actually be a proper teacher workroom because right now it has been modified and changed.
No classroom.
Right?
Yep.
The science lab, the typical classrooms, the art is actually going to move over, and we'll go into more detail what exactly that means. But that's the general gist of what is moving over. And again, it's not, that 36,000 is not just the 13 classrooms. There's a lot more to it, and that 36,000 it also includes what is called the grossing factor. So when you build a building, you need additional space for hallways, for toilets, wall thickness, electrical rooms, mechanical rooms, all of that stuff, custodial closets. So the stuff that actually allows a building to function and be built, that is part of the grossing factor. So that grossing factor is within that 36,000 square feet. For a 2-story option, stairs and elevator, stuff like that. So that is within that 36,000 square feet.
And I believe you mentioned it, but with the science room, but that includes those rooms that were previously displaced, right?
Yep.
Okay.
What we did was we took advantage of the fact that if we're going to be doing this expansion, rather than having the art room in the middle of the wing and putting one 6th grade extra classroom in a different wing, we just swapped the spaces so that they were aligned. So we didn't add more, but we did reorganize so that otherwise we ended up with like one 5th grade, one 6th grade, one 3rd grade classroom in the new addition and random spaces throughout. So that's what
Similarly
it
with
reflects.
special services, some of them are
Yes.
isolated off inside of the building. It was a chance to relocate to be central to allow all students access for support. Yep. Yeah, and we'll get into a further conversation in the future about what specific spaces are in there. We'll have sketch floor plans showing where they're located, and again, a laundry list, a space summary of spaces, sizes, and how that fits within the 36,000 square feet. So we'll move forward with these numbers and values here. Wanted to also show you all these very diagrammatic, high-level options, and this is what we're going to start seeing. This will be almost the landing slide moving forward for every presentation, and then we're going to dive into more detail for each of these. I'm glad that it's been mentioned multiple times of truly comparing apples to apples. because we feel very strongly, and as we were generating these diagrams, we actually can see there's now 3 options for modulars. Because as we were looking at where these mods can be placed on site, to truly get an apples to apples comparison, option 1 was a development, and I'll go into more detail. Basically, it's right where the new construction would be, however, not physically touching. So there's some constraints, limitations, expenses, etc., but that is truly the apples to apples comparison. And then options 2 and 3 are what we talked about last time, again, further away from the building, avoiding known utilities, and the rest, option 2 is the 2-story option, and option 3 is the 1-story option. It also gives you a sense of scale and how large 36,000 square feet actually is, especially when you put it on a single story, and it starts spreading out across the green space in the front. So looking at some of these in particular, so this is the actual building addition option that we had previously studied and presented last year. It's connecting the 2 wings, the north and the south wing here. Physical connections, you can actually walk from in the building into the expansion. Pre-K is on the first floor, the additional 3 through 6 classrooms and support spaces on the second floor, again, physically connected. Couple items with this. It actually impacts the service road and the utilities that are underneath the service road, as well as the stormwater system out there. So with this option here, there would be rework of utilities in that area, there would be rework of the stormwater, and the rest within that zone to make it function. However, it's physically attached to the building. Looking at option 1, this is the apples to apples option. You can see, again, the modular configuration, the footprint that it starts to expand. As mentioned, these mods cannot be physically connected to the building. So you need to walk outside. It can be a covered walkway, but that covered walkway cannot technically touch the building from a building code
So you have 1 inch.
perspective. So locating it here, yeah, you're a short circulating distance. You still have to go outside, but it's still relatively close. You have the mods for the actual building itself. You're still incurring the additional expense of all that underground work for your utility loop, your stormwater, your sewer, all of that stuff that has to be done in the permanent build. You're still incurring with the mods located here because they're in that. So this truly is the apples to apples because it's in the same location and it's minimizing that outdoor travel distance. So this is a new option that we wanted to present as the apples to apples.
And how close can the buildings be without physically touching, obviously?
I believe we'd have to check, but it's like 12 or 15 feet.
Okay,
So it's relatively close, but it's still
yeah.
outside.
But you can do a covered walkway so that kids, I know it can't attach to the building, but you could cover the
We could
majority of
have
the
a
walkway
covered
area.
walkway. Yep.
Yeah, okay. But we would still have to relocate the service road and move the
Right.
stormwater drainage and all of those other, okay.
Yep.
Could it
And
be
a covered
enclosed?
walkway is just the roof, right? It's not like the sides?
Yeah, and that's, could it be
Well, is that what
enclosed?
A tunnel?
Well, I'm not
No, I
looking
know
for
what you
this
mean.
one,
Yeah.
but I hate to get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
but they get further away from the building.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Once you enclose it, it triggers a different code implication and basically, no.
Okay. That's where I thought you were going, but
There's a
I
lot
felt
of
like we had to
rabbit
ask.
holes. Yeah, it triggers a snowball of different
Okay.
things. And that's because the modular units, it's the type of construction from an actual constructability and building classification type. Whereas a permanent building, it's built differently, it's constructed differently, different types of materials, and it allows you to physically connect because of some additional provisions that are provided within the physical building that's constructed. So this is the 2-story apples to apples connection, or modular here. And then, similar to what we had talked about last time, a 2-story option further away. So this is just one example of where it could be. This approximate footprint or size, to give you a sense of scale, could be up on the fields, up on the front, or really anywhere, but we located it here, again, to give you a sense of scale. moving it outside of that ring road and all those utilities that was impacted. So again, we're trying to avoid some of that added cost. However, you start pushing into the woodlands, and you're also so the walk from this building to the mods would be further. In comparison, a single-story option, see, the footprint is approximately double what a two-story option would be. And based upon that footprint, it would not fit to the left of the existing building, just with setbacks and everything else. So it would have to land on one of the upper fields. And because of that, you can see the travel distance and moving outside. It would also avoid, again, the ring road, the ring of utilities. However, you start pushing further in that upper direction, and we would have to confirm utilities because most of the utilities come in across the bottom. So,
What, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What facilities do pre-K currently use that would be housed in this building where they would potentially travel for?
So the preschool, that's one of the reasons when we did the original study, we decided to move preschool up versus grade 2 or grade 1, because our preschool students don't stay for lunch, so they don't access the cafeteria, they don't go to gym or art or library or those common spaces. So it's really a self-contained program. What we put in the preschool wing was a nurse's office, the special education offices, and a foyer reception area. And then because our program is designed for students with specialized needs, speech therapy, occupational therapy offices and space. But they don't access, you'd obviously have to have preschool bathrooms, things like that, but they don't access the library or the gym or the other major components of the FK. If we were to move a different grade, like second grade, we wouldn't have enough time in the schedule to get all the classes into those specialized programs.
Okay.
So they don't access as much.
But there would be 6 classrooms of students who would be
Yes.
needing to access.
That's right.
the building.
There's 6 other FK classrooms, and that wouldn't be a full
Wait,
grade.
I was just going to say.
It would be
5
6
years ago,
of the
that was a
8
grade.
sixth
Yeah.
grades would be out there, or 6 of the 8 third grades. We expect at that time to have 8 or 9 classrooms per grade level.
So there would be students in it that did need to make that
Yes.
trek?
Yes,
on a
yes,
daily,
the
couple times
preschool
a
would be
day?
self-contained, but the
Multiple
other students
times.
would have
Yeah, 2, 3
to
times.
travel for lunch, music, art, physical education.
It takes time.
And
Yeah.
just so I'm clear,
It takes time, and it's more challenging in the winter when you have
Totally.
to then
The
gear
weather,
up.
the weather
Or
was
in
an
a
obvious one,
pouring
but I was looking at how far
Yeah,
the,
I think the closer, I think it's worth pricing the difference
Right.
between a first floor and but I definitely think for educational purposes, the closer the modulars can be to the building, the less instructional time we lose in transition.
and Ingrid, I don't know if this is, I should know this, having multiple children in the system, but do they have a special every day? So every day, it would be at least 2 times that they'd have to make the trek or the journey?
And there's
Yeah, they
other,
do. It's,
I don't know.
and it could be more than that. It's,
there was
per
an
the
assembly,
teacher's
yeah.
contract, they have a prep daily, so students have a special every day.
Yep,
Either
okay.
gym, music, library, art. They have lunch every day. And then
Unless
we have a
they're bad.
band program. Some kids go at different times for instrumental music lessons. So
yeah, band.
it would be at least twice a day.
but then we have
Potentially
students
more.
that receive like literacy support,
Right, I
math
was just
support,
gonna-
so they
If you're having
leave the
pull-out
classrooms
services.
to go get that, or
Special
like
education
So they're
teacher,
able to go.
yeah, like.
And currently, do those children, probably not in third grade, but if those children are in the upper grades, do they go on their own to the special, or their special
No, the
support? or
teachers
The
escort.
teachers bring them?
But we will lose instructional time because
Right.
teachers have the full period for a prep, so they would have to escort. The other thing that I think would be really challenging is what Vicki's just talking about. So students in every classroom, because we are full inclusion schools, as we're required to be, students in every classroom receive, some receive special education services, some receive general education supports. So those staff members might have to run to teach a class in the wing and then come back to work with other students. Or if it's a pull-out group, those kids might have to come into the main building for special education
Right.
services and then go back to class.
That's actually what I was wondering. Like,
And right
if
now
you're a
they're not
sixth grader that
escorted.
has reading support.
So the students here in the building, they go on their own.
They go on their own.
because-
Within the building.
Yes,
then.
that's
the
what I meant
building, yeah.
today,
Yes.
right? If I'm a sixth grader and I, need support in math or reading,
Yeah,
I
you
go
go
on
on
my
your own.
own.
Not just sixth grade, I think like, yeah.
Everybody, but
Because
I'm trying to-
Yeah, right. But I'm saying like the fourth grade, you know what I mean? Like it's the younger kids too, because
Right.
it's self-contained, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
they know where,
It would definitely affect
So that would-
that. Yeah,
yeah.
because we couldn't say, it's
Oh, yeah,
time for
go
you to
across
to
field.
reading. Back up and see you in an hour, we can't do that.
The
yeah.
instrument, I mean, like the band program, my
Yeah.
understanding of how it works, according to my child, and actually both my children, was that they are self-regulated. They know when they're supposed to leave. They get up, they quietly leave the lesson, they take their
Right.
instrument, they go to the band room,
And
and they
then
come
they come
back when
back.
they're done.
Right.
And it's part of building independence for students, to
Yeah.
be able to self-manage
I mean, it's just- I
schedules,
don't-
yeah,
it's
like
not,
things, yeah.
So it's not as simple as just recess and special. It's,
Right.
There's more moving pieces, I think, is the.
Even the one that's very close to the building, the apples to apple, I mean, I don't really think it's a good idea for a sixth grader to even make that, to go outside the
Well,
building.
you probably wouldn't allow it, I would.
Even if they were like
We would have to,
15
fi-
apart?
no, somebody would have to
You need a badge to
go
get
and
in.
grab
you
them
have to
from
badge
Oh,
the,
yeah, the badge. Yeah.
because the building is secure too.
Yeah,
So
with that one.
you would have to have a teacher walk down and wait for the child to come over. It will impact a lot of different kind of structures and schedules that we would have to figure out.
And that's a good point, so, I'm sorry. So both buildings would be secured, right?
Yes.
So they would need, passes to get into both.
Key
Would there be
code
separate
entry.
key cards for
Yep.
the main building and then the
Yep.
modular buildings? Yeah.
Yeah, because our buildings all are completely locked down anytime the students are in the building. So every single door is shut
My
and you
son
have to
managed
have
get
a,
himself locked out once, and I can attest to the fact that
And
he
that's-
cannot get back
I
in.
mean, that's exactly what
you
I was
have to
thinking.
have a swipe card. So if a child had services, the teacher would have to walk them to the door, buzz them out, somebody would have to be waiting, buzz them in to the next. So it's certainly not easy.
One thing that the apples to apples option does start to allow is possibly a fence from the mods to the new building. We can connect fences, but the other options are just too far away, and it doesn't seem to make sense. But we could possibly provide a fence, which we have seen on some other projects, connecting basically the upper and the lower, so they're at least within
They're like
the
penned.
connector.
They're
or
caged
courtyard.
in.
Right, or the courtyard. But yeah, that's obviously a little bit of a Band-Aid for
Yeah.
the situation. It's not ideal, but it helps a little bit.
And I'm going to ask a question, I think I know the answer to it already, but if we were to do a one-story modular as 2 units and put preschool in one place and the other, just the 6 classrooms, that's going to drive costs because you have site prep and electric and wiring to 2 different locations.
Yes, yeah, that will be more expensive just because your utilities are further apart.
Right.
A lot of the benefits of clumping all the mods together too, it's the infrastructure, not only from the underground, but also just the heating, the cooling,
Yeah.
the plumbing, all of those components that are required to support that building are now duplicated.
Right,
So-
that's what I thought.
When this gets presented to the town, will it be presented like with pros and cons, or is that just kind of up to the public to debate it in order for it to kind of come to light?
Or do we
So
present like a
the intent
final?
is this committee
Yeah.
will vet, once we get all of the designs and the pricing and all, this committee will recommend one solution to the town. People can hear, and we can answer questions about the
There
pros and
will
cons.
most
We'll have
certainly be
open
argument.
forums
Well,
and
right.
community.
Yeah, no, I
But
know.
we won't present, these are 4 choices. We will say, this is the solution the
We
building
looked at
committee.
4 choices.
Yes.
And this was the
This
best.
is the choice
This
we
is what we're
selected.
recommending for the following reasons, and these were why other things were ruled out.
Yeah.
So like
Right,
similar,
yeah.
so similar to when the fire station proposal came through last year, they looked at 2 alternatives. One was rehabilitating the existing structure. The other was demolition and building a new structure. They elected demolition and building a new structure, and there was a discussion about why they elected that, but the other
saw that.
option, yeah, the other option was not presented because it had already been
Right.
discussed and debated.
Okay,
I
so
guess.
But as we get more information and look at all the costs and the potentials, once this committee has a final recommendation, I do anticipate we'll have several open community forums so we can talk about it and what the pros and cons were and why we considered things. Because I think it came up at the last meeting. We really do want to make sure the public fully understands all the options and why we're recommending one versus the other. So I think transparency is really important. And AI3 did that last time. We had several, and I thought they were fairly well attended.
I was amazed.
I mean, we had
Yeah.
a pretty good audience, so I think we'll go with that.
Plus, everything's available on YouTube. I saw the last meeting had a whopping
93.
13 views when
Yeah.
I saw it.
Oh,
Was
it
it more?
was 93 when I,
Well, once you start
I had to
putting
catch up.
dollars to any of these, those views will go up, right?
it's usually around 12 or 13 though. It was 93 for the last one.
All right.
So, again, those are the options that we'll move forward with. Just want to update everybody a little bit, provide a little bit more information regarding the types of information for the variations in the estimates. So, what we identified previously was 3 ranges of value for the estimates, the lowest being the construction trailer option, we'll call it, and then we had 2 other options. Type B, these are the actual options that if MOZ were to move forward, these are what we would recommend. Type A is the more expensive, type B is the value engineered option. So again, I just want to highlight a couple of these. We don't have to make the decision now, but this is what the estimates will be based upon and to start to differentiate between cost. And so there'll be an A and a B version of each of the options that were shown, option 1, 2, 3. So it'll be this. Option 1, type A, type B. Option 2, type A, type B. And option 3, type A, type B. You'll see it with the values. One's more expensive than the other. You'll be able to put 2 and 2 together, which one it is. Because of the enrollment projections, we are recommending to not provide the option for the construction trailer. Because what we saw with DAA's updated numbers is that you're not in a hump and it's not coming back down, it's only going up, and those really are temporary Band-Aids. And knowing that within 10 years you're still trending up, those units are not going to last in an educational environment. So what we would recommend and what we would like to do is to remove the construction trailer option and look at the 2 options for that would actually support educational use.
That's just a screensaver.
It freaks me out too. Like, what did I touch?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the lifespan on type A and type B?
So they're modular, so it's still not a permanent build. It comes down to maintenance. It comes down to the grade level. With this being elementary school, to be honest, middle school is the most rough on buildings, surprisingly. But so elementary school, you get a little bit more life out of it. I would say 20, 25 years, and then ultimately it depends on maintenance too as well.
I would assume there would be a difference between A and B in the lifespan.
Yeah, so running through the list, and I think it'll start to answer some of the questions. Type A foundation, actual legitimate foundation walls, like what you'd see on a house. Type B, on piers. Moving down, exterior siding. Type A would have cement siding. Type B would have texture 111 wood siding. Type A, metal stud. Type B, wood stud. Type A, plywood and cement board flooring. Type B, just plywood. So you can start to see difference in materials, which lead to longevity as well and durability. Type A is aluminum windows. Type B, vinyl. Type A, composite ramps for all of your ADA and accessible options. So think of like your composite decks, your Trex, and something like that. Versus Type B is your more what you see, aluminum ramps, aluminum stairs, etc. Interior finishes. This is where you start to talk about durability. Painted for Type A, you have painted drywall, painted chipboard walls, versus Type B has something, to put it in other terms, wallpaper, vinyl applied coverings within it. Porcelain tile on the floors in the bathroom for Type A, whereas Type B has VCT. Porcelain tile on the walls in the corridors for Type A, whereas In type B, it would be fiberglass reinforced panels, et cetera. So you can start to see where they land. A couple other bigger items are in the mechanical system. Type A would have air source heat pumps, so it's also working through dehumidification, whereas type B would be in-wall units, and then type A would also have a building management system. Type B would not. Building management system is to schedule occupancies, it can set temperatures, it basically is, it's the computer, it's the brains of the HVAC system within the building. Type B would be more of a localized system globally. So, super high level, that's what we're talking about for variables within it. Again, you can see some items for durability, exterior siding, that's a big one. Interior wall finishes, tile versus the rest, flooring, tile versus VCT. And again, type A would last longer than type B for obvious reasons, but again, a lot of it is also maintenance and durability.
Just as it relates to the two A and B,
Yep.
in the report, would it include anticipated efficiency and estimated heating cooling costs for between the two? I mean, I guess I would assume that type A would be more cost efficient to
Type
heat and
A
cool.
would be more cost efficient. We would not run energy models
Okay.
this early in the process. We will throughout the process on the final solution, but this early with the mods,
Yeah,
we would
yeah.
not. And this, as you can imagine, these would not perform nearly the same as a stick built at all. But
And given the difference in just how they're built and what they're built with, I assume type A would be more efficient than B.
yes, A would be more efficient than B. A would be
Less
more
efficient.
durable. A would be more durable, more efficient, and more expensive.
Yep, okay.
They always go together, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, plywood floors, it's like,
Right.
Do we have to make a motion to eliminate option C?
Type C? Or can we just discuss?
I think it was in the original proposal, so I think, yeah, we could probably vote to just eliminate it because it's, I don't think
Doesn't
it's
seem
worth
like
you
it-
spending time on.
Doesn't seem like it's the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
Right.
no.
I move to eliminate from feasibility consideration what has been heretofore referred to as option C for
Construction
modulars.
trailer.
construction trailer.
Construction trailers.
Second that.
All right, do we have everybody in favor?
Aye. So we'll do two price levels then
Yep.
for each of the different solutions. The modular that is in close proximity to the building, the one that is on the, a V on the street, and then the one that's out on the field. The two-story and the one-story.
Right, exactly. And one thing
Great.
that we are going to do as well, you'll see the building addition is over there with an X and the dollar sign. The pricing that we had previously provided is a year old now.
Right.
Construction escalation, prices have gone up to truly compare apples to apples. When we send out the mods to get estimated, we will also resend the, it's
Brick
going to
and
be the
mortar.
same estimator, so we'll have him re-estimate based on current market rates of what the actual expansion is. That way it truly is an apples to apples and to incorporate the escalation of the year later component.
How does that estimation process work? Like you said, an estimator, is it
Yes.
like a broker of some sort? or-
So there are things called professional estimators, like that is what they do. And we work with, so AI3, I don't know how much or how little you know, but AI3, all we do is schools, educational design. And we have an estimator that we work on with every single one of our projects. He is in the public sector, primarily on schools as well. He estimates our projects as well as our competitors. And so he has a pulse on the market and knows what's being built, what the prices are, et cetera. So what we will do is we will send him the documents, we'll have conversations, and he will look at the drawings, he'll look at the specs, he'll look at anything that we provide him, knowing that where the markets are trending and cost of construction, and he will assign values to components of it. So there's going to be a separate number provided for the site work. And as you can imagine, building addition and option one, the underground site work is going to be the same number because we're going to have to move the utilities, but you're going to see a difference in the actual building cost. Similarly, you'll see variations within option two and option three, but they'll go through the documents, the sketches, the drawings, the narratives that are provided by the design team, and he will price accordingly based upon the educational market and public bid projects.
Okay.
Just one more question about the design.
Yep.
depending on, say, 3 versus 1, would the drop-off and pickup for parents and buses be different? Would there be like 2 locations now?
Well, I'm just looking at where you're looking at placing that. That is, we would have to change where we have staff, but the bus loop is that centerpiece there. So I would assume kids can get off, but we have to rethink about preschool because preschool comes in at a different time, and we'd have to really relook at the traffic pattern for that.
So potentially there could be 2 locations for pickup and drop-off.
Yeah,
Or no?
I
Or
don't
is
know how
everybody
you're
in the loop?
designing it. You could, like right now, our preschool comes in through the back of the building. So potentially, I don't know what the flow of traffic would be like on Boardman if you could bring students in, but it looks like you're planning to use that same bus loop for everybody. So it would probably have to be a staggered arrival dismissal. Preschool starting 15 minutes late,
Would
drop off
that
early.
impact, I don't know the time of preschool, but recess, right? So I assume during recess, they close those gates and you can't use, right?
We do, and we have gates at Freeman so that buses can't come in during the day.
But
So
for
it would be
pickup,
closed.
if we have option 3, we'd have to
You mean
figure out a new.
preschool pickup while
Yeah.
So
recess is
preschool right
running.
now,
Yeah.
the time is staggered because they share the same bus loop as HOD. So preschool starts at 9 o'clock. So once the buses are done, preschool comes in. They come in the back of the building and they leave early.
But in this scenario.
In this
At
scenario.
the end of the preschool day,
Yep.
our Freeman Kennedy 3 through 6 may likely be at recess right there.
That's the question.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So like,
Yeah, it could- it
we
could
may
impact
need
the
a
recess
different
schedule.
Yeah.
solution for a pickup drop-off.
Or we'd have to.
Figure
we'd have
something
to
out. I'm just
change
saying,
the
we have to
recess time, yeah.
figure something out.
Yeah.
What we'll do, and again, this is.
You guys are way ahead of where.
No.
We would have to relook at that, yes.
This is for a sense of scale, just
Yeah.
to provide how big this footprint actually is. What we're going to do, and actually it leads a little bit into the next conversation of schedules and upcoming meetings. We're going to take this information as well as all the size of the building, the 33 classrooms, or rather the 6 and the 7, the 36,000 square feet. We're going to work through schematic floor plan sketches of what these layouts can be. We're also going to be talking to Site and Civil to work through, okay, if it is located up here like option 3, what has to be done from a site circulation standpoint? All of these options are going to impact paving, sidewalks, whatever it may be to get the drop off, the pickup, the site circulation to work. There's no way around it, and as you're all identifying now with whether it's the playground, whether it's any of that other stuff, because also the pre-K component is required to have a playground. So there's additional site work beyond the footprint of the building. It's site circulation to support the pre-K drop-off, it's the pre-K playground. You're gonna want paving and sidewalks or the rest to go from the mods to the building. Yeah, there is already paving in some of these instances, but others you're gonna have to add paving. So working through what the schematic site plan options are for each of these is what we're gonna go to Site and Civil with and be like, okay, here are the footprints, here's where they're thinking. We need X, Y, and Z. And while they're developing possible site circulation diagrams, we're going to be developing possible footprint organizations of, okay, now we know our 6 classrooms, our 7 pre-K classrooms, how are those located? Maybe the pre-K classrooms, for instance, are located in the upper part here, so there's a pre-K loop tucked away, as an example. So that's the next conversation that we're going to have. Because of that, I know we had targeted for future meetings. With school vacation next week, we're proposing our next meeting in May. So
Cancel the 24th and
cancel the
push back.
24th.
Yeah.
That will give the design team, now that we know the size of the project, the scope of the project, that will give us the opportunity to work through and to be able to provide sketches and site plans, et cetera, to review and talk through.
I think that's fine because we agreed at the last meeting, we're not trying to be ready for the spring, so we have a little
Right.
bit more time.
Right, exactly.
Just a question for the committee, because not everybody was part of the other feasibility study. So when we did the last study, we did traffic, like they did traffic assessments and monitored patterns in traffic to make sure that that we could accommodate the pre-K flow. We looked at where the cost estimate for the brick and mortar has all the new roadway in it. It's got the new playground. Would it be helpful to take some time out of the next meeting just to review the brick and mortar design so you can see what we're comparing it to?
Yeah, I think so.
I just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I have it imprinted deeply in my brain, but, you know, just so that you know kind of what they're going to develop for each of these modulars so that we, you know what we're comparing. If that's helpful, Justin, maybe we could just pull a handful of slides just to kind of show what that looks like so that we can see how it looks different than the modular solutions we're
I think
now
that's
looking
There
at.
was a
That's a
really
great
good
idea.
slide in there as well that reflected the estimating process too. I mean, for the
Yeah,
question
that's why
about
I'm
how
thinking
the
some of this
cost
might
is
be
gonna
helpful.
projected. I think I'm like remembering almost like a scatter plot that showed comparable
It was.
Yeah.
projects and
Yeah.
cost per square foot, and it was very granular. Yeah.
I think I remember something like that from the first meeting. that we
Yeah,
had.
he might have,
Yeah, I
he
think
might
we
have
looked
showed
at
the,
Yeah.
I think he showed the typical costs or the comparison costs of MSBA built projects because they track that data per square foot.
Was it
But I think
PTO?
it just, then you can see kind of what they developed in the first and how it looks different or
Yeah.
flows differently.
Sure, and again, I think there's gonna be there's like, obviously there's the pure cost, right, of
Right.
modular A, modular B versus
Right.
brick and mortar. Then you look at, we're talking about
Site work.
things like, well, I was gonna say like more, less concrete ideas, but also important, like security, right? So like a brick and mortar all connected is one type of security situation versus having kids walk across the thing,
Right.
across the field. Versus, there's a lot of other things to kind of, so it's like we'll have all of our dollar amounts and then we can kind of make our adjustments based on like other
Right.
factors.
Right. So
Putting in
I
defense,
think
yeah.
reorienting to what was done so far would be helpful, just to refresh all of our minds, and then we know how each option compares. So, yeah, that would be great.
Is it fair to say that the modular buildings would be significantly
PTO on the 8th.
faster to build, or is they're
What?
about the
On the
same?
8th.
I know a lot probably goes into it,
Yeah.
but
No, this PTO meeting on the 8th.
That's okay, though.
They would be faster. However, so time on site for construction would be faster because they're built off site
Oh, yeah.
and they're shipped to the site. But say duration from when we release documents to occupancy is probably maybe a little bit faster, but they need to build them. So there may be a lull on site of not much happening because they're building them off site. So they
Basically
would be
pretty
quicker,
similar.
but not.
the end result is about the same.
Yeah, they're not going up over a summer.
Right.
Because they're constructing like a big warehouse, right? It's not like it's coming off a factory line. I mean,
Every project is obviously going to be different, but are there local examples of type A and type B? If we wanted
Yes,
to take,
there are.
if we wanted to just kind of get a sense of what each would look like.
Field trip.
He's mentally going through plans in his head.
I actually am.
Yeah.
Watertown High School right now is actually occupying mods. They are in, I believe, type B, and the reason is that they had to vacate their entire high school into modular units for a couple of years while the existing is being demoed and a new building is being built in place. So they're using type B as temporary 2-year swing space, and then they're removing those mods and they're moving into the new building. So that would be an example of type B.
Those are our mods.
Can we
Yeah,
get
it's
them on a discount?
That conversation thought has been floated. But I do know there was reference previously, and I can't remember.
Holliston.
Policy,
No.
yes.
Hopkinton.
Hopkinton.
Yeah. They do have mods. I'd have to take a quick look to see again. I think that may be a hybrid of an A and a B. And again, to go from A to B, we've just shown some of the big examples. If you really wanted tile in option B, like there is a little bit of flexibility, but yeah, I don't know
I
exactly.
know I spoke with the superintendent, Carol Kavanaugh, in Hopkinton, and I know they're moving them. So I'm guessing they don't have a full foundation, but I could be wrong.
And those are
They
a
put
temporary
them in
solution. They are
for a
Those
short
like
term,
option
and now they're
C
moving them
type.
from one school to another
I mean-
that is also going to be
Yeah.
developed in the future, so.
They're like redoing their entire academic complex. It's
Yeah.
massive.
So. Great.
Okay, so what we had proposed, and again, we can have a conversation, May 8th would be the next meeting. Proposing on coming back 2 weeks later, possibly. And again, this is all determinant on down here. We targeted getting estimates back to this group, having a meeting the middle to end of June. I flagged a couple dates there. Last day, based on your school calendar, last day of kindergarten is the 11th. Last day of school for the other students is the 17th.
I will not be available on the 19th.
Well,
I'm not either, so.
I think he has the 18th or the 20th as options.
Yeah, so.
You just picked the
No,
one
I
day.
know.
no, it was green, so I thought that's what you wanted. I'm sorry.
No, dark green is a no-go.
No-go,
April
okay.
break, Memorial Day, and then Juneteenth. So I guess it's a conversation for this group. Once school is out, it becomes a little bit tricky for meetings and/or because of school's out. So our target was to get estimates back to this group for a cost and a price to present that to you, either June 18th or the 20th that week. That could shift down if needed, but in reality, it can't shift up because we need time to estimate. And that is based upon meeting on the 8th, meeting 2 weeks later to get additional feedback and ultimately sign off to send out for estimating, based upon the level and the conversations that are going to occur, 3 weeks-ish. We need a little bit of a buffer in there, so that's where the 4 weeks comes from for the 18th to the 20th here. So that's where that ultimately lands.
We deciding now? 20th works for me better than the
I
18th.
can only do the 18th of those 2 dates.
Would it be possible, Justin, we've done virtual meetings before. I think as we get later into June, it's going to be harder to get everybody together. So as long as we have the opportunity for some people could join virtually, if you can't be here, then I think that we could probably work something out that week.
Yep, absolutely.
The 18th is better for me as well.
Me as well.
Can I go back to the May?
Yeah, did you do the
One.
21st?
Not the 21st, but that 8th. Is there any way we could make it the 7th? It's my anniversary, and the next day is my son's birthday, so it's like I'll get in trouble either way, which I know is hard with
don't
baseball and
really doesn't matter.
softball, but, oh, really?
I could do the 7th.
I can do 7th.
that's fine.
That there's going to be something going on here at the on the 7th? May 7th? May 7th is the election.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was.
there you
So
go.
the gym and
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire complex is going to be a polling station.
That's right.
So there you go.
That ends at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So,
Have a meeting, everyone will be
If we
here.
could have a meeting at 8 o'clock, I'll be
Bob
here,
was
that's
here.
fine. Or I would say the day before.
Or I could do the 6th.
The 6th, I was going to suggest the 6th if we didn't want to go
the 6th works for me.
full day on the 7th.
Yeah, 6th or 7th.
I can do the 6th.
All right, let's do
So
the
May
6th. That
6th
sounds
is the
good.
next one.
And also, just public service reminder to everybody at the table, there's an election on May 7th.
We all caught that. Well, yeah, May 7th. Let's do
I
it.
was like, what am I missing on the 7th? I was thinking PTO.
It's funny how the date
like
doesn't
band
matter as much,
concert.
or it doesn't flag as much when you're not on the ballot.
So that works. And then the 21 or the 23rd you're looking for?
23.
Is 21 school committee or no?
21st is the school committee
Yeah.
meeting, so 23rd would be better for me.
Oh, of May? I'm not even.
May, yeah.
I can do that.
21st is the reorg of the school committee. Those town meetings the week before, so.
But the 22nd we can't do for some reason?
I'm not available. tonight.
Okay. All right.
You guys can meet without me if you want.
We won't get very far.
Say it'd be a short meeting.
I know nothing about
Just have
modular
to trudge over
construction,
from the
so.
softball field?
I'm going to see if it's a home game. Hang on.
I know, I can see mine too.
We could also push it to the following week, not the 29th, but the 20th or the 30th, if that works better.
So let me get back. Which, I think we were looking at the 21st, but that's school committee.
Yep.
Right.
Or the 23rd. The 23rd is challenge.
But the 20th, this week of Monday, is that more open for people?
Do the 20th.
I could do the
Yeah,
20th. Yeah,
do
I
the
could do the
20th.
20th. That's fine. That's not like Memorial Day. No, that's
No,
next
that's the
week.
next week.
Next week. 20th works for me. 20th?
Yeah, 6th and the 20th, because
Going
I'm
once,
actually,
going twice.
I can't do
20th is way better.
And then we're targeting the 18th.
Yep. So May 6th, May 20th, June 18th. Perfect.
And both of those are at same time, 7 o'clock
7 o'clock?
in here.
Yeah.
All right.
That was the last slide I had.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
All right, great. So if anybody has questions on the report or feedback, let me know. Otherwise, I am going to share it with the town administrator so he can have a select board for our.
Oh, he only wants to do one meeting?
And if anybody wants to join that meeting, it's going to be a joint meeting of the Select Board and School Committee on April 23rd at Town Hall, and the first part of it will be just a presentation from DAA. They'll go over the data they presented for us to keep those two committees apprised of the progress of our work. Okay.
All right.
Could we, could we level set like super quick, just so we all understand like steps after we pick what it is that we think would be good, just so that.
I think that's
'cause, like, I think we
very
talked
helpful.
about this last time, but I think you were sick, so, which would be that we will come forward with a recommendation. The first ask won't be for everything, it'll just be for design fees. So it's not, there'll be 2 rounds of town meeting vote. So, a recommendation, a choice to move forward with design, whatever that choice is. And then after design is complete, a actual hard number of what the construction cost would be, and then the very big town meeting with the very big ask attached to it. So it kind of comes in escalating layers, but yeah.
Yeah, because post-feasibility, on average, it's typically the design portion, which would be the final schematic design for whatever option we go. That's usually about 10% of the total project cost.
Yeah,
Justin?
approximately. It depends on a lot of different variables, but that's
That's just a rough estimate. So in the other project that we looked at, it was about 38 million, so we would have been going to ask for 10% of that to do the design work. So whatever we recommend, the first ask will be for 10% of the total project cost to do the design. That process, the design process, is at least, when we talked before, for the brick and mortar, it's at least a year.
yeah, it's approximately a year for a project this size.
Yeah. So then you'd have another year, and then we'd be going back for the balance to bid the actual construction.
So not to be super redundant, but just to say it in my own words. So that our task as a group is to go through these options, decide together what we think is the best option, and then present that option to the town to move forward.
Yep. To vote to approve the
Design,
the next phase.
The next
which would
phase
be
of this
the design
project.
work.
Yep.
And the charge allows for the carry forward of this committee into the
Yes.
design phase and construction phase, I think. So we
Yes.
can
So
all.
this is just the first.
Yeah. we
This
can-
is the first hurdle, and then everybody that was appointed has the right to stay on the committee through construction if you choose to. So, yes, that's what
Or
the charge
to
was.
drop out if you choose to as well.
Yeah.
You can, and then the.
I mean, I don't know if that's the right thing to say.
Yes.
Can I drop that?
You're here for the next 14 years. That's how we build this.
And then you have to answer all the questions on the other end.
So when you say go to town, it goes to the select board, not to the
No.
village?
No, the people.
So the entire
yeah.
town needs to vote at
People
town
are-
meeting to appropriate the funding because it's going to exceed the levy limit. It'll have to be borrowing.
It's a debt exclusion.
So it has to go to town meeting for a vote, and then it also has to go to the ballot. And so it has to pass at town meeting. If it passes at town meeting, it goes to a town election, and it has to pass at the ballot as well before the funding is appropriated. There's a cost to having the election, so you want to go in that sequence, because if it doesn't pass at town meeting, you don't want to pay $12,000 for the election. So it's town meeting vote, then it would go to the ballot. I'm sure we will present the final recommendation to both the school committee and the select board. They may either support the project or not support the project, but it would still go to the town for vote is my understanding.
But even the design fees? the
Design fees
10%,
are
right?
still above
Yeah.
the levy limit.
So we could get shut, sorry, we
The-
could
I
get
was-
shut down right there.
You
Yeah.
could. The mechanism, which I think is kind of what you're asking as well, would just be a warrant article.
Yeah.
So we
Yes.
will coordinate with the advisory committee to establish a warrant article. We'll go before advisory to explain what we've done up until this point and what it is that we're trying to accomplish with whatever the solution is. And then that will be part of the town meeting warrant, and we will get a floor vote
Which
in one direction or the
I
other.
think,
which-
to be fair, is how we're here today, because there were questions out of that advisory meeting, which have brought us here to this second,
So last
Second
fall,
feasibility study.
in lieu of a warrant article for brick and mortar construction design fees, there was a pivot to a warrant article requesting that a building committee comprised of not just school committee members be established, so that there were more voices at the table and more options being assessed. So that we've already done our how a bill becomes a law of warrant articling with respect to all of this. But that's, that is the process, and we will certainly communicate with, that's why we're having the joint meeting with the school committee and the select board in April.
And
I think it's important that we keep all town boards apprised of the project. I think we don't want anybody to be surprised, and we want more voices in the discussion all along, so that it's not, so that everybody has the information long before we go to a town meeting for a request.
And then are the mechanics of the, basically do the townspeople vote and then it's kind of up to the office of the treasurer to figure out funding? Or is that part of when we put our pitch together, we would have this is how this will get kind of paid for, these are the tax effects, that kind of thing?
So once we just decide on the option we're recommending and we have a total price, we would work on a warrant article. The warrant article, we work with the town finance director. It'll be a borrowing article. And so he will give us the cost of borrowing, and we'll be able to estimate the impact of the project cost on the average tax.
Oh, yeah, that's because it's not,
Yeah,
in
but
a way
it
it is,
won't
but it's not
be-
just
it'll be a
here's a number,
borrowing.
we'll figure it out after. It's
No,
this is how it
we'll
will
know
be.
it up front.
Yeah,
He'll know how we're going to fund it. It will be borrowing, and then they'll be able to figure out whether they're bonding it for 25, 30 years and what the cost will be.
Sure, because that's another thing, if we're going with, let's say a lesser quality modular and say it does have a life of 10 to 15 years, but you're going to be paying for it for 30 years, that's kind of where I'm trying
Yeah,
to
we'll
get
have
at,
all
where
of
it's-
that in the
Yeah.
warrant article.
Years. I'm sorry. no.
I learned about that in Econ 101. It's like, do not lease your furniture, because by the time it's done, you don't want it anymore.
Yeah, I'm a CPA, I'm thinking about depreciation, I'm
Yeah, we'll definitely have all that information. And that's the good thing. If we have final numbers and estimates in June, then we have time to deliberate, because town meeting's not till November. So we can work on what the warrant article would look like, what the borrowing would look like, what the impact would be. And I would hope between, the summer's not a great time for it because people are away, but hopefully in September and October, we have a couple of community forums and invite the public in to hear the information. And so we have a little more time to do that.
Yeah, because ideally, the first time people hear about this isn't going to be the vote, because then,
we
we
don't
discussed
want
the
that.
last meeting, that's when people kind of react, but if everyone's kind of
Bottom
informed on the process, they're kind of, they understand where we're coming from, why we're coming in with the direction we are, then we could talk to them over a series of months instead of a couple weeks.
Yes.
I think then, you're going to find the people who are going to support it might warm up to it, and the people, there's always going to be,
People who won't.
detractors or whatever, but, hopefully, obviously, that's our job, is to show this is why we have this plan of action, and this is why we bring it to the town. We're not just,
And I think in those discussions, it's helpful to say, this is what the long-term cost is going to be, and this is what you're going to see on your tax bill. People want to know why we're recommending this, but they also want to know what the personal impact will be. So we want to have all that information available.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. I guess we'll see you all on May 8th.
Do I not have to officially?
I moved that we adjourn.
I was just going to leave your meeting, sorry.
You are not allowed to leave the meeting yet.
Oh, wait.
Can I get a motion
I
to
just
end the
moved. I
meeting?
moved we adjourn.
But you moved before I asked.
sorry.
You're not allowed to move until I ask. This is my one thing I have.
Someone else can make the motion.
motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.